Well, after you sold Blackwater, you actually got hired by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and you moved to the United Arab Emirates, and you actually set up an 800-person battalion of foreign troops to essentially create security out there?
Well, no, the main reason I moved to UAE was because of piracy.
Okay.
Somali piracy, which was raging then. And there was 80 to 90 ships taken per year. And they'd sit on these ships for 6 months to a year waiting for the ransoms to get paid. And so we ended up building a counter-piracy police force to basically go after the pirate logistics. Built it with and through the local government, and that worked. That unit went active in 2011. By 2012, you don't hear about Somali piracy anymore. That worked, and the program cost less than what the pirates were taking in ransom per year. It was a great exercise in how to do this cheaply and practically, and actually, because you have to do boots on the ground. The U.S. Navy, the Europeans, the EU, they were cruising all over the Indian Ocean chasing pirates. Dumb. If you have a wasp problem in your yard, you don't chase them around the yard with a spray can. You go to the nest and you deal with the nest. It didn't take a genius to figure out where the pirates were in Somalia, because you could fly along the coast in a turboprop aircraft and say, there's a 1,000-foot ship anchored a mile off that tiny village. Probably pirates there.
Okay, so you actually went after the pirates where they stayed.
Sure. Because for the pirates, it was a business. They'd actually have a team that would go in a boat way out to sea, 1,000 miles off, grab a ship, take it back, and they would switch to the B team, which would be the guards, sitting on that vessel, waiting for the ransom to get paid. So the police force just basically went after anybody that was supporting those guards guarding that ship. I mean, if a pirate grabs a ship off the coast of Oman and they go to get resupplied in Oman, the police are going to come and arrest them. That's all the Puntland Marine Police Force did. They provided a level of law enforcement reach for the local government to extend sovereignty along their shore. We actually made a movie. It's called the Somalia Project, a documentary about that effort. And it actually won, I think, in the Soho. There's a film festival here in New York, and it won an award there.
Nice.
It's still on YouTube. People should watch it. My favorite part of that movie is there's an interview of this kid, probably late 20s, Indian kid. And he said he was describing being held hostage for a year. Engineer had been beaten to death. Another guy had his ear cut off. He said, one day we heard shooting, and we heard a lot of shooting. And then we heard a helicopter, and we knew someone had finally come to rescue us. And there's a great scene where they get rescued and they come to shore, and there's 25 extremely bedraggled dudes. And they're kissing the ground, they're praying. He said, we prayed to God, and God sent the PMPF. And I thought, because we caught all kinds of shit for the audacity of building a police force to go after piracy. The UN called the program illegal. The State Department, the idiots in Washington, were doing all they could to block it. That's what ended piracy.
Well, I remember at one point, Obama, I think, sent a team of SEALs that killed Somalian pirates as they were attacking a ship. And I remember the Somalians were so outraged, like, this is so unfair.
The Maersk,
Alabama. We just
Alabama.
steal, we don't kill. And it's like, you look at this going like, come on, you go and attack.
I think that was the Maersk, Alabama.
Yeah, you know what
and
I'm
they rescued
about.
Captain Phillips. Sure. That rescue operation probably cost as much as our police force did for a year.
Okay.
Because they flew the entire assault team from Dev Group and boats and ships out there and blah. Great.
Yeah.
So great flex. The U.S. military can do that.
They proved a point.
They proved a point.
Yeah.
But very costly.
Yeah. So at what point did you actually meet Trump?
I met him one time during the 2016 campaign in his office for like 10 seconds. Literally poked my head in. He was on a conference call, shook his hand, and that was it. And that's the only time I met Trump until I saw him in 2019 at a veterans event. And he came up to me and he said, Erik, you were right. I should have listened to you on Afghanistan.
What, didn't you offer to take over the war in Afghanistan for $5 billion?
Not quite that simple.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Sure. So I'd been paying attention to Afghanistan, obviously, and what a freaking failure it was. An Office of Circumlocution fail. We'd been through 19 commanders in 20 years, 32 different troop rotations, right? So to say we weren't in Afghanistan as a country for 20 years, we were there for 30 troop rotations, and it's extremely disjointed. And so Steve Bannon, policy advisor at the White House then, came to me and he said, and this is like in April of 2017, he said, Afghan policy is going to be debated. Write an op-ed. So I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and making a case for a much smaller footprint, a stay-behind capacity, basically a skeletal structure capacity that could be contracted. Why? To address the issues of 30 different rotations. And so that op-ed stimulated some discussion at the White House, definitely blocked by the legacy swamp. Mattis, 4-star general, now SecDef, so really acting like a 5-star. McMaster, who is a serving armor officer as National Security Advisor, who really wanted his 4th star. They hated any idea that was not completely Pentagon. And so that plan that I laid out basically would have, and at that point there was 29,000 contractors in country already. So this is not an expansion of contractors. This was a reduction of everything.
Yeah.
And I said we could do this, a stay-behind capacity of 6,000. And it would have been, there was 91 battalions. I would have put a 36-man mentor team with each of them. Live with, train with, fight with. But because they're contractors, I can pay them to go in for 90 days, home for 30, back in, and keep that same mentor with the same unit for years. Afghans want to know who's next to them. Is it a brotherhood of arms or is it a revolving door? Because that's all 30 different troop rotations was. And when the U.S. lives on one base and the Afghans live on another base, didn't have that kind of connectivity. So reliable mentors that would train and fight, eat the same chow, ride in the same vehicles. 2, reliable air support. When the Afghan forces, and this was a pervasive problem, the Afghan Air Force never was really fully effective because trying to take an illiterate population, 90% illiterate, making them to fly a sophisticated aircraft and maintain it, anybody that was qualified ended up getting hired by airlines. So they would wait 7 to 10 hours for air support. You're calling, I'm in a firefight, come help me now. 7 to 10 hours, not cutting it. Base after base would be surrounded by the Taliban. Just a simple siege. So bad that the base commander would be calling back to Tullow News, the news program in Kabul, like a call-in show saying, I'm at a base, help me, we're going to die. And nobody did a damn thing about it. Again and again and again. 3, reliable combat logistics. Make sure the men are paid on time, fed on time, that they have adequate fuel, batteries, munitions. All the areas of pervasive corruption, not hard to control. And most important, and also importantly, medevac. Because if you're an Afghan soldier, you are 8 times as likely to die as a Westerner that gets wounded. Men will fight harder if they know someone gives a shit about them. So that would have cost $3.5 billion, less than 5% of what the U.S. was spending per year.
There you have it.
Less than 5%.
Yep.
Pentagon doesn't like that math. So instead, they do it pull out, you leave tens of billions of dollars of military equipment, which is now in the hands of Taliban and everywhere else. Congress appropriated $14 billion to resettle Afghan refugees, most of them unvetted. I will debate anybody, anywhere on the merits of my plan because it was not theoretical. We had done lots of training, lots of aviation, medevac, logistics, all the rest, operating there cheaply, effectively. I mean, here's the thing. The U.S. government was paying $250 a gallon for fuel by the time it gets to where it gets put into a Humvee
Wow.
or a vehicle. Why? The fuel they were buying, all the diesel fuel, all the gasoline, was imported, Defense Logistics Agency contract, to Karachi, trucked from Karachi, Pakistan, the port, up into Afghanistan. About a third of the Taliban's operating budget was tolling that fuel.
Huh.
Okay, so the Taliban's operating budget was about $600 million a year. A third in fuel tolls, a third in drugs, and a third tolling illegal mining. There was a huge oil field that had been drilled and proven during the Soviet times in the 80s, called Amudarya oil field. Drilled, know it's there, 5 wells, capped properly. For $20 million, you could have drilled expansion wells, powered the entire country. $150 million bucks. You put a modular refinery there, you have enough jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline, and enough HFO to power the entire country. This is not rocket science, but it's generals that don't understand math and don't understand business. They're thinking about only controlling some geographic battle space. It's too bad. It's really too bad. We could have done so much better there as a country. There was a lot of effort, but not very productive effort. And I really feel bad for veterans that lost friends, limbs, spouses, mental health, to have it pissed away by politicians. And Trump tried to engage, but he never really, his national security apparatus then was very much part of the problem.